Hello, and welcome to another forecast. I am here to speak about the upcoming full moon in Aquarius, and I think it's going to hold quite a lot of intensity for us this sort of middle part of August 2024. So let me share the screen, and then you can see the chart that we're referring to and get an idea for it. Remember that it's really helpful if you begin to layer the chart and the energy that we speak about in these situations to your own chart. So if you know you have anything in those degree ranges that we refer to, anytime I mention planets or points at certain places, if that sounds familiar to you, and I'm going to give you a little example in this chart of that, because there's a way that immediately for me, I go, ping, that's important, let me pay attention. Okay. So I have 3 planets at 8 degrees in my chart. And as you can see here, the nodes are at 8 degrees for this lunation. So I'm going to know, depending where they are for me. Now, I don't have them at 8 degrees of Aries and Libra as they are on this chart, but I have something at 8 degrees of Leo and of Virgo and of Gemini. So now I'm going to say, well, the energy of Aries is sextile to the 8 degrees Gemini, and it is trine to the 8 degrees Libra, and it is sextile to my 8-degree Leo planet and trine my 8-degree Leo planet to the North Node. And then the awkward one will be my Saturn in at 8 degrees of Virgo, because that is 150 degrees from the North Node, and 30 degrees from the South Node. And those are invisible points, so it's a bit awkward. So I'm going to be quite supported in this lunation by the benefics, my own benefics, Jupiter, which I have in Leo, and Venus, which I have in Gemini, by this nodal axis, which is all about karmic and dharmic shifts. However, my Saturn is going to be a little uncomfortable. So there I'm going to go, okay, how do I work with the discomfort of what Saturn's bringing up? Or how do I be open to what Saturn's bringing up? Okay, so that's how you can start to recognize these things in your own chart. Immediately you look at the degrees and you think, okay, this is a lunation at 27 degrees. The sun is at 27 degrees of Leo and the moon is at 27 degrees of Aquarius. So it's full moon in Aquarius opposite Leo. Sun and moon are always opposite each other at full moon. That's just what makes it full moon. And Mercury is retrograde conjunct the sun at 26 degrees. So I also have my sun in my chart is at 26 degrees. So already this whole thing is speaking to my Gemini sun at 26 degrees here is going to be connected to this lunation. So again, another way I can personally apply that to my chart. This is where it's always good to, if you have a copy of your chart on one of these free platforms, like this one is AstroSeek or astro.com is also good. You just open them up and then you go and see, well, I've got these degrees. These are familiar to me. Is anything around that happening in the chart she's speaking about? That's going to give you a whole nother nuance and layer of flavor that you can add to your chart. So because when I speak about the forecast energy of this Aquarius new moon, I'm speaking about the umbrella of this Aquarius full moon. But you can personalize that by learning and understanding slowly, cumulatively, and layering on your own natal chart. So I really just wanted to give you a little taste of how that works. Now you can see in this chart, there are 2 really, really strong T-squares. So a T-square is in opposition, just like the sun and the moon. And in this case, sun, Mercury, and moon are in opposition. And at 90 degrees between the 2 of them, we have 27-degree Taurus. Uranus is at 27 degrees of Taurus, right in between these 2. So a T-square is a pressure to change. It is 2 squares and an opposition. And we have every time we deal with a full moon, as I said, we're having that kind of opposition, but it doesn't always form a T-square, where it means that Uranus is actually kind of like the planet that we could look to give us the pop that we need to pop the boil, let's say. What is it that breaks the tension in this situation? And then if that's a struggle, you can always go to the empty square. So this means the moon is in a fixed air sign, Aquarius. the Sun and Mercury are in a fixed fire sign, Leo, and Taurus is a fixed earth sign. So what is the last fixed sign that we would look at? We would jump across the chart to Scorpio, fixed water. And so there we might say, okay, there's some deep excavation, emotional excavation that needs doing. Maybe we need to really cut out that which is toxic. Maybe we need to go into the sewer of this, like go into the cesspit, look what is not working first so that we can get rid of it. That might become a support point for you, especially if you hold strong Scorpio. It might be easiest to work there. But here, remembering that Mercury is already retrograde, we also have a very reflective kind of an energy going on where it's a real opportunity to shine a light. I mean, Mercury is invisible because he's right by the sun, but the sun shines brightly and the moon shines brightly at a full moon, reflecting the sun's light. So there's this deep reflection of what was working and is no longer working, or what was never working and I just kept doing it anyway. That lovely Einstein quote about doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. It's a bit like that. Mercury retrograde gives us that opportunity to be like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? So I actually personally like Mercury retrogrades. I know a lot of people go, ooh, Mercury retrograde. And obviously there are things to be cautious of. But for me, especially because at this point, by this full moon, Mercury's retrograded back into Leo. He starts his retrograde, I think it's at 4 degrees of Virgo. So there's this level of discernment and editing that comes all the way back to me. Leo is me, my sovereign, autonomous self. So it's like that and Mercury rules Virgo. So starting that retrograde in Virgo was really like, okay, these are the things on my to-do pile that just become miscellaneous and I never get done. It's time to clear this crap. So Mercury has moved backwards through those first degrees of Virgo, really starting to be like a forensic accountant. And then he hits Leo, where he meets the sun. And at the point of this particular full moon, they have just crossed paths exactly, because the sun is moving forward and Mercury is moving backwards. So they've just crossed paths. And they've had this deep, like, powwow, this one-on-one decision on these things. And now the moon is really playing into the narrative now. She's joined the party. From a distance, she's going, well, look at this. What about this? And ultimately, it's in a very Leonine way. So it's very much like, Leo, you're doing the self-reflection on you whilst looking at how that plays out in Aquarius, the world, your community. And like I always say, we can say Leo is the king and Aquarius the kingdom, or queen and queendom. So it's like, here I am and I have to be the queen bee, but I am part of a hive mind. As much as I need to focus on being the most energetically hygienic, polished up version of myself, which takes work. I mean, that sounds easy, but to do that, you also have to face what Scorpio was talking to us about. You have to face the shadow. You have to face the uncomfortable emotions. You have to fall on your face. You have to fail in order to get back up again to fight another day. Not every day ruling your kingdom or queendom is going to be easy. Struggle is part of life. So here, the big reflection, which is more of a retrospective reflection than ever with the Mercury retrograde piece, is really saying, I'm ready to see the shocking truth. And I say that because we add the Uranus, who's shocking, in Taurus. And Taurus does actually rule the neck and the jaw and mastication. And Taurus would prefer to keep things happy and surface level. But here we're going to have to look at the shocking truth. So in essence, this full moon is saying, I'm ready to reveal the shocking truth that society has been hiding, top-down power, all those kinds of things getting really rumbled up already for a while. This is not a new story, but this particular full moon is really bringing it into kind of like a loudness. And then this is also dealing with the first full moon that Pluto is co-present in the sign of Aquarius. Okay, so that is also pretty big, because last full moon in Aquarius, last year around this time, Pluto was in Capricorn, and now he's in Aquarius. And this is where he's going to spend the next about 20 full moon in Aquarius's. And Pluto brings with him that deep power struggle, that power play, power dynamic, making big things small and small things big, change, transformation, phoenix processes. These are the things that Pluto brings. So even though they're not near each other, Sun, Moon and Pluto are at like bookends at either side of this archetype of Aquarius, they are still sort of wearing the same outfit. They're still wearing an Aquarius cloak. So there is it's like an extra undercurrent. And also because this is the beginning of the Pluto and Aquarius journey, it's sort of setting the tone for something. So it's almost like that reflection with Mercury. We are reflecting, but we can't fully uncover all of the things, the lessons and power changes that need to happen in the Aquarian area of our worlds. We can't fully get it just yet. We're not really, the moon is not brightly reflecting that. Pluto is very far out. He's very dark. He's at the beginning at a seed point, 0 degrees of the sign. He is planting a seed here, and we're beginning to show, almost like illuminating the end of his cycle. Like, what will we learn? There's still so much we cannot know. And that's a long journey. That's not happening within the space of a month or a year or even a decade. So this is quite powerful and potent in itself. And that really speaks into a lot of what's this dynamic that's being tied in here with this aspect pattern of the T-square between Sun, Moon, Uranus, and Mercury. Okay. But then we have another really strong T-square between Saturn at 17 degrees of Pisces and Venus at 18 degrees of Virgo. And they are both squaring off to both of these planets, Mars and Jupiter in Gemini, okay, 17 and 19 degrees. So this is also really, really strong because here we have the benefics and the malefics, okay? So we've got a conjunction here that is separating now. They've already had their meet up because Mars moves faster, so he's already moved past Jupiter. So we come into this full moon with this kind of feeling of whatever the Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Gemini will have brought for you, which might have been like, go, 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 do it now, push through, win the race, think big, take a chance. It might have been very big and intense for you like that. And we arrive at this full moon, and full moon's always big and bold and polarizing and intensifying whatever's showing up for us. So it's like we haven't almost even come off the Jupiter-Mars conjunction, and they are still conjunct, even though it's separating. And that's one, the greater benefic, the Jupiter, and the lesser benefic, Mars. And they are squaring Venus, the lesser benefic, and Saturn, the greater benefic. So there's an opposition between what we could look at as a beneficial and challenging energy, and there's a conjunction between a beneficial and a challenging energy, and this benefic is squaring that malefic and that benefic. Sorry, confusing. And this malefic is squaring that benefic and that malefic. This is a big deal. Also, just to mention that Mars is also at this point, he is oh no, Venus travels faster. So Venus is going to come into aspect, stronger aspect with this. So this square is getting tighter. Even though these two are separating from each other, Mars and Venus are getting tighter. And Saturn is also slower. So this conversation is getting tighter. So at the point of this full moon, we're coming off the one big intense Jupiter-Mars, but we're getting closer to the Mars-Venus square and the Saturn-Jupiter square. So there is this quite an intense opportunity for you to look at the places that you thought were good, that were maybe not so good, or you thought were problems that were maybe actually gifts, and how do I do versus how do I be, and how do I tract versus how do I go out and attack, and how do I know how to expand myself, and also when do I contract myself? So for me, it's like inhale, exhale, expand, contract, reach, rest. All of those energies have a space. You can't just be doing one without the other. There's that dynamic of interplay, and this is really a full moon where we get to say, well, what is what is out of balance for me? What do I need to feed into my daily routines that give me a little bit of extra support here? Because I can feel I'm uncomfortable. And my favorite quote, there's no growth in the comfort zone and there's no comfort in the growth zone. This is uncomfortable because we're changing, because we're growing, because we're daring greatly, as Brene Brown would say. We are daring to go there. We are vulnerable. We are exposed. We are unsure. We are overwhelmed. It is not fun. But if we be with it rather than numb it out, which is always a thing that we need to really watch out for. And when I say that, I just want to point out that Neptune in Pisces at the 29th degree here has stationed retrograde now, but still at the 29th degree of Pisces. This is where we might find that this is just overwhelming. I don't want to feel this. I want to think about the ideal. I want to dream of the best case scenario. And when I'm feeling something that doesn't feel like that, I'm going to numb it out. That's a lower level of Neptune in Pisces. I want to numb it out. Luckily, we've got Saturn in Pisces saying, let's get a little emotional discipline, buddy. Let's figure this out. We have to do this in a structured and routine way. We have to be methodical. We have to put one foot in front of the other steadily every day, because what you do on a regular basis is who you are. What you do consistently is what you get. So Saturn very much speaks into that, and his whole journey, and he's about halfway through his journey in Pisces, his whole journey is very much about emotional mastery and repetition of go into that feeling and just ride it like a wave, because Pisces is the ocean and emotions are waves. They come in waves, and we get to decide how we interface with them. At full moon, emotions are usually bigger, whatever they are. If you've been in a very happy place or a very in love place or a very grief-stricken place, whatever it is, it gets bigger, usually at full moon. And here we have this 29-degree Neptune and Saturn in Pisces as well. So there's this potential for us to say, okay, well, I've got to feel this. It's a big wave. It's a big wave, but let me just let it roll through me and move on. And then another big wave, another big wave, another big waves come in sets. And as somebody who's sat with some big waves over the last few years, I can tell you that if you don't freeze them or resist them or try and swim away from them, if you just let them roll over you, they roll and roll and roll. And then it's almost like you're spent. And then they stop for a while and you go into this calm, neutral space for a while. And then maybe a few minutes later, maybe a day later, maybe a week later, whatever it is for you, depending on what you're going through, the set will come back in. But it actually passes quicker if you just let it pass through you. And so try not to numb out and avoid feeling whatever is going on for you here. We've already spoken about so many things. I don't want this to get too long. I mean, I could go on. Also, obviously, we just want to always notice where the nodes are. So we're also still very strongly working in that dynamic. And now I hear a lawnmower. So I think that is my cue to cut off for now. We're still strongly working, though, in the Libra Aries axis, and we are getting close to our next eclipse cycle. So bear that in mind as you check in with what you're feeling through this full moon, because it's leading us to a path of that next eclipse cycle, which is in September. I think we start late September with eclipses, September, October. So do go there, feel those things so that you know what is coming, and get uncomfortable. Get uncomfortable. Oh, and one more thing, Pluto and Neptune, you can see the strong sextile here between Pluto and Neptune. So these two big outer planets where it's like the ideal, the imaginal realm, the best case scenario, and Pluto saying, well, in order to get what you want with that, we're going to have to make some big changes and power shifts. And that might be uncomfortable, but that's the way through it. That's how we get to a new Earth. So ultimately, it is for our good. So I hope this has been helpful. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, do all of those things that help. The algorithm stuff that I don't know very much about, but I appreciate your assistance on that. And Try to be present. Journaling is one of my favorite tools. Meditation, yoga, any walks in nature, get into your body, be in your heart. Leo is the sign that rules the heart. Recognize the reflective processes with your Mercury retrograde, and notice, go and look at your chart and notice what it connects to and where there are similar degree planets, even if they're not in the same signs as you. Just notice these things. Start to get a little bit more interactively dynamic with your chart. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching, and I will be back soon.